the Canine Fam. Hope everyone's doing well. Was out at the Pomona show on Saturday. Saw some people I didn't see in a while, so it was cool. Couldn't stay real long, but good show. Good people as always, and got hit with some questions like I do, but one of the questions I want to go over tonight, because there's so much misinformation, and I think a lot of it is intentional, and when I break it down for you, it's really going to come down to common sense. When I take you behind that black curtain, right? When I break it all down, it's gonna make sense to you, because it's just straight up common sense. I'll let some people jump on, and we'll jump right into it. As always, guys, any questions, throw them out there. Comments, good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. I go live. I don't have anybody like manning it and making sure that some people get on, some people don't, or if there's questions, they delete them. To me, listen, we keep it as real, raw, and live. That's how I roll. And you can agree with me, disagree with me, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to tell it like it is, the way I see it, based from real world experience in real time. So one of the questions I got on Saturday was an actual customer. He's been a customer for a while. And he was asking me, he's like, man, he's like, dude, these east-west, they call it the east-west, feet, right? Where the feet are going east and west, and they're on, they're sideways. Some are more extreme than others. He's like, man, I've been hearing about, I got to back down on the protein content. I go, why? He says, well, because that's what I'm told creates the east-west issue from a lot of these breeders. The bones growing too fast. There's the ligaments and the joints aren't catching up. There's all these like stories that people literally are making up, that when you really break it down, makes zero sense. And when you really break it down and you understand this is all a nutrient game, it's all about nutrients, then not only does it not make sense, it actually can hurt your animals. So, first of all your dogs, your canines, my canines, your canines, everyone's canines are carnivores. Bottom line. They survive and they thrive on organ meats, muscle meats, bones, bone marrow, that animal protein, animal fat. That's number one. Not even up for debate. So, by understanding that animal protein is the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet for your canines, and then for people to come in and say, well, you need to limit that so your dog doesn't go east-west because the bones are growing too fast. Well, if you really break this down, there's two reasons why they're going to go east-west. And most of the time, if it's really extreme, it's going to be genetic. So that maps back to the breeders. And if it's not extreme, then most of the time, it's going to be because the dogs are overweight, or a combination of both. Because if you look at this as a human being, what happens when somebody is overweight? A human being. And you look at how they stand. Your legs, your hips are the foundation to keep this thing upright. Right? We're going to talk human beings right now. So when you're carrying extra body weight and really excessive body weight, your feet are going to go one of two ways or both. Your feet are going to go out to compensate for all that body weight, or depending on naturally how you walk, or they're going to go in depending on how your natural gait is, how your walk is. So a lot of times, if you pay attention to human beings, you'll actually, if you're walking behind a human being, you'll actually see, if you pay attention to their feet, because I pay attention to all of this. It's so intriguing to me. But a lot of times humans will actually go in on one side of their foot and out on the other. But when you see really overweight people, and they tend to have that inside step, it's so exaggerated because the foundation, the pillars are trying to compensate all that extra weight. Or it's the other way, right? You look at overweight people and the sides of their shoes are like just screaming, right? When they wear down their shoes, their sneakers, it's all worn on the side. Or if they tend to go in, then it's worn that way, because it's compensating for all that body weight. It's the exact same thing for your dogs. It's no different. Now, when you look at a human being, let's just say they're not overweight, but you can still see the inside of their instep is tilted. Well, that's genetic, right? The parents could have done something to alter that in the growth stages. But if you think by like braces and things like that, if it's extreme, but if you think that limiting the most nutrient dense foods, and then my question is, what are you going to replace it with? If you're going to limit them, what are you going to replace it with? And if you're limiting the most nutrient dense foods because the dog is overweight, that's a different story. Now you're wanting to get into a calorie deficit so your dog can lean out. But to blame it on the most nutrient dense foods because you're trying to sell this thing that the bones are growing too fast, or the ligaments in the joints, that's complete nonsense. And people are being misled. I had a full-on conversation with this guy. I said, first of all, you know, and everything I'm saying here, I said to him, because my intention's pure. Well, his dog, if his dog, I think his dog, I don't know, 6 or 8 months old. I said, and his dog was laying down, wasn't even, standing up. I said, man, you drop 10, 12 pounds on this dog, you'll see a complete difference, not in just the stance, but the movement of the dog, just like a human being. If you're overweight, it's going to limit your ability to move in a flow state, right? It's no different like when you see a human being and you say, man, what great movement. He moves like an athlete, or she moves like an athlete. It's simply because they're not carrying all that extra weight. And they've probably been an athlete their whole life, so their muscle memory and their overall conditioning is all in alignment. But for anybody to say that the reason that East-West, or issues with their stance, or issues with their back, has nothing to do with extra body weight and or genetics is simply wrong. And it's misleading. And people are making wrong decisions based on that information. Again, that's my question to anybody that talks about this. You're blaming animal protein on those issues, and you're going to limit the animal protein. Then what are you replacing it with? And if you're doing it for a calorie deficit, and you think you're replacing with highly processed commercial feed, and you think that that's a better alternative, you got to explain why. It's subpar ingredients. So understanding that the food that you give your canines is the fuel. So the cleaner the fuel, the smoother the ride, just like with a human being. I was looking forward to this tonight because, man, I've never really spoke about it enough. I'm going to speak on this more and more because it's just straight up nonsense. And it's misleading, and people are making wrong decisions, thinking they're making the right decisions based on that information. This is a nutrient game. And if you're a breeder, you want your breeding program to be just inundated with animal protein. Think about this. Wolves, coyotes, hyenas, Mother Nature. All they consume is animal protein, animal fat. And naturally, Mother Nature says, if you're overweight, you're not going to survive. That's all they consume from the beginning. From the time that they're being created, that's all mama consumes. That's all she consumes when she's feeding them. And that's all they consume when they're feeding off of mama and then when they wean off. From the time they're created to the time they die, it's animal protein, animal fat. So if you're saying that Mother Nature is wrong and has been wrong, that has the most successful, consistent breeding programs across the board forever. Forever. Guys, it's wrong. And there's different reasons for that. Some want to take the spotlight off of their breeding programs. Some want to pretend that they got real information. Some, it's a combination of both. Some just straight ignorance, that they don't know. They're just regurgitating what others have told them, or what they've read, or what they saw a TikTok video, or they saw a YouTube video. But let's really break this down common sense wise. You're talking about the most nutrient dense foods on the planet, and you're going to limit them, and you're going to blame them for the bones growing too much, too fast. So the dog's feet are east-west, or the elbow issues, or whatever other issues there are. Instead of understanding that you're, as a breeder, taking on the role of God to a certain degree. So if you are taking that responsibility on, then it has to start and stop with you. And again, my question is, you're going to limit the animal protein, then what are you going to replace it with? And if you're not going to replace it with something, then really what you're saying is it's not the animal protein, it's the calorie deficit you want to get them in so they lose weight, so now their structure doesn't have to compensate for all that extra body weight. And how simple is it to understand if your dog is overweight, just like a human being? If you could grab rolls, you're overweight. If you could grab rolls on your dog, they're overweight. Now, there's plenty of people, plenty of my customers, that want their dog thick and overweight. They want that thick look. The English Bulldogs, some of the Frenchies, the XLs, even Corsos. A lot of people live and die on the scale, right? That's their thing. Now, that's their prerogative, right? That's what they're breeding for. But you can't come back when there's issues with the structure, the skeletal issues. You can't come back and blame it on something. Blame it on something that the dog needs to thrive on. That's the difference. That's what I'm saying. Again, just like humans. When I was 40 pounds heavier, I had issues with my lower back, my hips, my joints, all of that. Of course, this is remedial. This is really common sense. When I broke it down to him, he's like, "Man, I never really thought of it like that." Yeah, 100%. So anyway, there's my. Anybody has any questions about this, throw it in the comments. But that's my um, that's my stance on this.